By the time Alpha King Kale reached the tribunal hall, Nessa Varn had already been speaking for 11 minutes. He heard her voice before he cleared the door, clear, unhurried, carrying across the chamber without effort. He'd been told there was an emergency tribunal. He'd been told it was underway. He'd pushed past 3 sets of doors to get here and had not been given any other details. He stopped just inside the entrance and listened. And if the tribunal's position is that being present at a location constitutes proof of involvement in what occurred at that location, then I would gently suggest that the 40 people who were also present in that corridor that morning should similarly be standing here. She paused. I noticed that they are not. There was a rumble from the assembled pack members on the benches. Not hostile, something more uncomfortable than hostile. The sound of people who are watching someone be correct and finding it inconvenient. 3 tribunal elders sat at the raised bench at the front of the hall. 2 of them were looking at Nessa with the slightly stunned expression of men who had anticipated a straightforward sentencing and had received something substantially more complicated. The 3rd was staring at the table. Nessa stood in the center of the chamber. She was small, not fragile, just compact, like someone built for economy of movement. She had her hands folded in front of her and her chin level, and her voice had not wavered once in the 2 minutes Kale had been standing at the back of the room. My second point, she continued, addresses the testimony of Warden Solt. The tribunal accepted his account that he saw me entering the supply store at the 7th hour. I would like to formally note that Warden Solt's account cannot be accurate, because at the 7th hour I was in the teaching yard with Elder Marin's weaving group, 12 members of which are sitting in this hall right now and who were not asked for their account. I've asked them to stand if they're willing. 12 people stood. 2 of the elders looked at the 12 people standing. Then they looked at the 3rd elder, who was still studying the table. Kale moved to the side of the room, staying near the wall. He didn't want to interrupt. He wanted to watch. My 3rd and final point, Nessa said, is perhaps the simplest. The item I am accused of stealing, the storage ledger, was found in my quarters. The tribunal has treated this as evidence of guilt. I would like to suggest another interpretation, which is that an item found in someone's quarters is an item that someone wanted found there. I would ask the tribunal to consider who benefits from my removal from the supply coordination role I've held for 4 years, and whether that question has been asked at any point in this proceeding. The room was very quiet. Kale looked at the 3rd elder, Elder Croft. He was still looking at the table, and the quality of his stillness had changed. It had the particular character of someone willing time to move faster. Nessa unfolded her hands. I have no formal training in tribunal procedure. I have never done this before. I have presented the information I had available to me with what I hope has been reasonable clarity, and I thank the tribunal for allowing me to speak at length. She paused. I am now finished. She stood quietly waiting. Elder Croft finally looked up. His eyes moved across the hall, and then he found Kale at the back of the room, and what crossed his face was not surprise. It was recognition. Kale walked forward. The hall rearranged around him as he moved, the shift of bodies and the drop of eyes that came with his presence, the particular change in atmosphere that he'd spent years learning not to notice, because noticing it too much made him feel like a weather event rather than a person. He stopped at the front of the chamber, between the witness floor and the elevated bench. I would like, he said, to hear the original charge read aloud. Elder Croft read it. His voice was careful. It sounded thinner spoken aloud than it had presumably looked written down, vague on specifics, heavy on implication. And the evidence presented to support this charge. One of the other elders, Lyra, who Kale had always found direct and trustworthy, read the evidence list. There were 2 items. Warden Solt's testimony and the ledger found in Nessa's quarters. Warden Solt's testimony, Kale said. Has it been cross-referenced against any independent record of his location and Nessa Varn's location at the 7th hour? The tribunal did not, Croft began. That's a no, Kale said. He turned to look at the 12 standing pack members. Thank you, please sit. They sat. He turned to face the bench. I want to be precise, he said, so that no one in this room misunderstands what I am saying. His voice was quiet. It was the particular quiet that people who knew him understood meant he was choosing every word with care. A member of this pack has been brought to tribunal on charges that rest on testimony that has been directly contradicted by 12 witnesses who were not approached, and on evidence found in her own quarters, which any person in this hall should recognize as an unreliable indicator of guilt. He paused. I want to know why this tribunal was convened without those 12 witnesses being contacted. I want to know who submitted the charge. And I want to know why it was scheduled for today, when I was occupied with the Boundary Council in the East Wing. Croft's mouth opened. Nothing came out. You don't have to answer now, Cale said. I'll ask more formally in writing tomorrow morning. He turned away from the bench for the first time. He looked at Nessa. She was watching him. She had a look on her face that he recognized not because he'd seen it before, but because he understood its components, the aftermath of a long, sustained effort, the peculiar exhaustion of having held yourself together under pressure for an extended period, and finally, partially exhaling. Her eyes were steady. Her posture was still upright, but the hands she'd had folded calmly in front of her had relaxed at her sides, and he could see faintly that they were shaking. She saw him notice, her chin lifted slightly. He felt a flash of something, not pity because she clearly didn't need it, something more like recognition. Nessa Varn, he said. Yes. Are you all right? She considered this with visible honesty, which was not what he'd expected. People in her position usually said yes without pausing. I'll be better in about an hour, she said, when the adrenaline resolves. That's a reasonable answer. I'm trying to be accurate. You've been being accurate for the last 15 minutes, he said. I arrived in time to hear the final third. It was exceptional. A brief something moved across her face, there and then disciplined away. I didn't know you were there. I know you weren't performing for my benefit, he paused. That made it more impressive, not less. Elder Lyra spoke from the bench. My king, I would like to formally move that the charges be suspended pending full review. I should have raised procedural concerns when this was filed, and I did not, and I want that acknowledged. Cale nodded at her. He appreciated Lyra's directness. She was one of the few elders who engaged in self-correction without being pushed to it. Seconded, the second elder said. Croft said nothing. The charges are suspended, Cale said. Full review begins tomorrow. He looked at Croft. Your presence at the review will be required. He turned back to Nessa. The hall was beginning to move around them, the quiet buzz of a crowd that has witnessed something they'll be discussing for days. Nessa stood still in the middle of it, like a stone in a current. Where did you learn to build an argument like that? Cale asked. I read, she said simply. I've read most of what's in the pack library. Everything. Twice in some cases, the archive on pack law 4 times. She paused. I had a feeling it would be useful someday. I didn't anticipate this specific situation. No one plans to defend themselves against false charges. No, she said, but I'm glad I was prepared anyway. He looked at her for a moment. She had not flinched once during this entire exchange. She had not thanked him unnecessarily or made her relief into something she owed him. She stood in front of him like a person who had fought her own battle and was simply glad to have fought it well. Come with me, he said. I want to speak with you outside this hall, somewhere quieter. I have questions for you. About the case. About who filed the charge, he said, and about why Warden Solt was willing to lie in a tribunal. I suspect you have thoughts. She glanced briefly at Elder Croft's rigid back. I do, she said. Good, he gestured toward the side door. I want to hear them. She walked beside him, and he noticed that her steps were steady and her head was up, and she didn't look like someone who had just avoided disaster. She looked like someone who had done what needed doing and was ready for what came next. He found that he was already looking forward to the conversation.